Part 1. The stars above Kansas burned bright that night, scattered across the sky like tiny pinpricks of light. Jack Miller leaned against the fence post at the edge of his field, staring up at the heavens. It was one of those rare evenings, where everything felt still, no wind rustling through the corn, no distant hum of cars on the highway. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that made a man think about things bigger than himself. Jack wasn't much for deep thoughts, though. He was a farmer, plain and simple. His life revolved around planting, harvesting, fixing broken tractors, and keeping his family fed. But tonight, something tugged at him. Something he couldn't quite put into words. Maybe it was the way the air smelled different, cleaner, sharper. Or maybe it was just the weight of all those stars looking down on him. Whatever it was, it gave him a strange feeling in the pit of his stomach, like the universe had shifted slightly out of place. He glanced toward the far end of his property, where the old oak tree stood silhouetted against the horizon. That's when he saw it, a faint glow hovering near the tree. At first he thought it might be headlights from a car parked too close to the field. But there were no roads nearby, and besides, the light didn't move like a vehicle would. It hovered silently, pulsing softly, as if alive. Jack squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Probably just a drone, he muttered under his breath. These days, drones seem to pop up everywhere. Farmers using them to survey crops, kids flying them for fun, even companies testing deliveries. Still, something about this one felt off. Curiosity got the better of him. Grabbing a flashlight, from the barn he started walking toward the light. Each step crunched loudly against the dry earth, breaking the silence of the night. As he drew closer, the glow grew brighter, casting an eerie blue hue over the surrounding ground. His heart began to race, though he told himself it was nothing to worry about. Probably some tech company running experiments without telling anyone. Happened all the time. When he finally reached the source of the light, he stopped dead in his tracks. It wasn't a drone, not unless drones had taken on shapes completely foreign to anything he'd ever seen. The object hovered about 10 feet, off the ground, smooth and metallic, with strange markings etched along its surface. They weren't letters or numbers, but symbols that looked almost organic, twisting and curling like vines frozen mid-growth. For a moment, Jack forgot how to breathe. His mind raced through possibilities. Weather balloon, military experiment, UFO. No, that last one was ridiculous. Aliens didn't exist. Everyone knew that. And yet, here he stood, staring at something that defied explanation. The object emitted, a low hum vibrating faintly in the air. Jack took a cautious step backward, gripping the flashlight tightly in his hand. If this thing decided to do something hostile, he wanted to be ready, even if deep down he knew a flashlight wouldn't do much good against whatever this was. Suddenly, the hum grew louder, and the object began to descend slowly until it touched the ground. Dirt swirled around its base, kicked up by the force of its landing. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the light dimmed, leaving only the soft glow of the moon to illuminate the scene. Jack hesitated, torn between running back to the house and staying to investigate further. In the end, curiosity won out. He crept closer, shining the flashlight beam over the object. Up close it looked even stranger. Its surface shimmered, catching the light in ways that made it seem liquid rather than solid. Those markings, he couldn't stop staring at them. They seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. As he knelt down to get a better look, he noticed something else. Patterns etched into the soil beneath the object. At first glance, they looked random, like tire tracks left behind by heavy machinery. But the longer he studied them, the more deliberate they seemed. Circles within circles, lines intersecting at precise angles. They reminded him of crop circles he'd seen on TV, except these weren't in a field. They were right here, in his own backyard. A chill ran down his spine. This wasn't natural. Nothing about this was normal. For the first time in his life, Jack felt truly afraid. Not because of what he saw, but because of what it meant. Someone, or something, had come here. To his farm. To his home. Before he could think too hard about it, a sound broke the silence. A soft click, like metal shifting against metal. Jack froze, his eyes darting back to the object. Had it moved? Was it waking up? Hello? He called out, his voice trembling despite his best efforts to stay calm. Is anyone there? No response. Just the same eerie quiet that had settled over the night before the object arrived. Jack swallowed hard, backing away slowly. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't going to answer him. Not now, anyway. By the time he reached the house, his hands were shaking so badly he could barely turn the doorknob. Inside, Rachel, his wife, sat at the kitchen table sipping tea. She looked up when she heard him come in, her brow furrowing. At the sight of him, "You okay?" she asked, setting her mug down. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Jack opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. How could he explain what he'd just witnessed? She'd think he was crazy. Hell, he thought he was crazy. "I'm fine," he said, finally forcing a smile. "Just checking on the fields." Rachel raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, she turned back to her tea, leaving Jack to wrestle with his thoughts alone. That night, sleep eluded him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the glowing object, its markings etched into his mind like scars. What did it mean? Who or what had sent it? And why here, of all places? Little did Jack know, miles above the earth, another pair of eyes watched him closely. Eyes belonging to beings who had traveled across galaxies to study humanity. Beings who found humans baffling, contradictory, and utterly fascinating. Beings who couldn't understand why humans acted the way they did, and who were determined to find out. Part 4. The tension in the town grew thicker with each passing day. Alex and Mia's presence became harder to ignore, not just because they were always around, but because their behavior seemed to stir something deep within people. It was as if their constant observation forced everyone to second-guess themselves, to question why they did the things they did, and whether those actions made sense. Jack noticed it most at home. Rachel had started snapping over small things. Burnt toast, misplaced tools, even the way Jack slurped his coffee. Normally she'd laugh it off or shrug it away, but now every little annoyance felt like a mountain. When Jack brought it up one evening, she sighed and said, "I don't know. What's wrong with me? Maybe it's those two strangers. They're always watching, judging. It's exhausting." Jack didn't argue. He felt the same way. Ever since Alex and Mia arrived, he found himself analyzing his own actions more than usual. Was he working? Too hard? Not hard enough? Did he spend enough time with Rachel? Too much? The questions gnawed at him, leaving him restless and irritable. Dr. Laura Bennett noticed the change too. At first, she thought it was just her imagination. After all, stress could make anyone edgy. But when she started seeing arguments break out among her team members over trivial matters, she knew something was off. Even Steve Dawson, usually the calmest guy in town, got into a shouting match with another mechanic over who left a wrench on the floor. "This isn't normal," Laura muttered to herself one afternoon as she sat in her van reviewing data. She glanced toward Alex and Mia, who were standing near the edge of Jack's field, staring blankly at nothing in particular. What were they doing to people? That evening, Jack decided to take matters into his own hands. If Alex and Mia weren't going to leave and weren't going to explain themselves, he figured maybe he could trick them into revealing something. He invited them to dinner at his house, hoping that getting them into a more personal setting might loosen them up, or at least give him some answers. Rachel wasn't thrilled about the idea. "Are you sure this is a good plan?" she asked as she stirred a pot of stew on the stove. "What if they're dangerous?" "They haven't done anything bad so far," Jack pointed out. "Besides, I want to see how they act in a real human situation. If they're here to observe, let's give them something worth observing." Reluctantly, Rachel agreed. She set an extra place at the table and tried to act casual when Alex and Mia arrived. They stood awkwardly in the doorway, looking unsure of what to do next. "Come in," Jack said, gesturing for them to sit. Dinner's almost ready. Alex and Mia exchanged a glance before stepping inside. Their movements were stiff, mechanical, as if they were mimicking human behavior without truly understanding it. Rachel served the stew, though neither guest touched their food. Instead, they stared at their bowls, silent and unmoving. "So," Jack began, breaking the uncomfortable silence, "you said you're here to observe humans. What exactly are you looking for?" Mia tilted her head slightly. "Emotions, interactions, decisions." "Why?" Rachel asked bluntly, setting her spoon down. "What do you care about us?" Alex hesitated before answering. "Your species displays contradictions. We seek understanding." Rachel frowned. "Contradictions? Like what?" "For example," Mia said, her tone flat, "you fight wars yet create art. You destroy resources yet strive to protect nature. You value independence yet rely on connections." Jack leaned back in his chair, thinking. "You think we're confusing because we don't follow logic all the time. Is that it?" "In part," Alex replied. "Logic guides efficiency, yet your chaos often leads to innovation." Rachel crossed her arms. "Innovation doesn't sound like chaos to me. Sounds like progress. And pain," Mia added. "Your emotions drive both creation and destruction." The room fell silent again. Jack looked at Rachel, then back at their guests. For once he didn't feel angry or frustrated. Instead, he felt a strange mix of pity and curiosity. Whatever Alex and Mia were, they clearly didn't understand humanity. Not fully, anyway. "Let me tell you something," Jack said after a moment. "A few years ago, we had a tornado hit this area. It destroyed half the town, including our barn. We lost everything, tools, crops, livestock. But instead of giving up, people came together. Neighbors helped neighbors rebuild. Strangers donated. Supplies. We got through it because we cared about each other." Alex's expression didn't change, but Mia's eyes flickered with something faint. Interest, maybe, or confusion. "Why help others when survival benefits the individual?" "Because we're stronger together," Rachel answered firmly. "Alone we're weak. Together we can face anything." Mia tilted her head again as if processing the concept. "Strength through connection." "That's right," Jack said. "It's not always logical, but it works. And yeah, sometimes it causes problems, people argue. Relationships fall apart, but even then we keep trying. That's what makes us human." For the first time since they'd arrived, Alex and Mia seemed genuinely intrigued. They exchanged another glance, this one longer and more deliberate. Then Mia spoke, her voice softer than before. "Connection despite imperfection? Is that hope?" Jack smiled faintly. "Yeah, I guess it is." After dinner, Alex and Mia thanked Jack, and Rachel politely and left without another word. As soon as they were gone, Rachel turned to Jack. "Do you think they understood any of that?" "I don't know," Jack admitted. "But maybe they'll think twice before writing us off as chaotic." Over the next few days, the atmosphere in town shifted slightly. While Alex and Mia continued their observations, people seemed less tense around them. Some even went out of their way to include them in conversations or invite them to community events. Whether it was Jack's explanation at dinner or simply the passage of time, something had changed. Even Dr. Laura Bennett noticed the difference. "They're still studying us," she told Jack during one of her visits to the field. "But it feels less invasive now, almost respectful." Jack nodded. "Good. Maybe they're learning something after all." Little did anyone know, Alex and Mia were learning, but not in the way anyone expected. Back aboard their scout ship, Zenara reviewed new footage sent by the drones, clips of families laughing together, friends helping each other, communities rebuilding after disasters. Each scene sparked questions in her mind, questions about logic versus emotion, efficiency versus connection. "What do you think?" Varric asked as Zenara paused the playback. "I think..." Zenara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I think there may be value in chaos. Perhaps it is not weakness, but strength." Varric raised an eyebrow. Strength? How? Zinara watched the screen again, replaying a clip of Jack Miller talking to his wife on their porch. There was warmth in his voice, determination in her smile. Despite everything they'd faced, they remained united. Chaos drives growth, Zinara said finally. It forces adaptation. Without it, stagnation follows. Varric considered this. If chaos is strength, then perhaps we have been mistaken in our pursuit of pure logic. Zinara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she gazed at the images of Earth below, her thoughts swirling like storm clouds. For the first time in centuries, she wondered if the Veil had misunderstood not just humanity but themselves. Part 3. Over the next few days, Alex and Mia became fixtures in the small town. They didn't blend in, at least not in the way most people expected strangers to. Their presence was like a shadow that no one could quite ignore. They showed up at places where people gathered, the diner, the grocery store, even the park where kids played after school. But they never truly participated. They just watched. At the diner, for instance, they would sit in the same corner booth every day, staring at the families eating burgers and fries. They didn't order anything themselves, which made the waitress, Linda, increasingly uncomfortable. "They don't eat," she told Jack one afternoon when he stopped by for coffee. "Not once, not even water." Jack shrugged, pretending it didn't bother him as much as it did. "Maybe they're on some kind of diet." Linda rolled her eyes. "A diet? For 3 days straight? Come on, Jack, something's off about them." He couldn't argue with that. The more he saw Alex and Mia, the stranger they seemed. Their movements were too precise, their expressions too blank. Even when someone tried to strike up a conversation, they responded in clipped sentences that left everyone feeling unsettled. Take Steve Dawson, for example. One evening at the garage, Steve decided to test them. He walked over to where Alex and Mia stood near a row of parked cars and asked casually, "So, what brings you two to our little town?" "We observe," Alex replied without hesitation. Steve smirked. "Yeah, I've heard that line before, but why here? Why us?" Mia tilted her head slightly as if considering the question. "Your species displays contradictions. We seek understanding." Contradictions? That word stuck with Steve long after the conversation ended. What did it mean? Were humans really that confusing to outsiders? Or at least to whatever Alex and Mia were? The townsfolk weren't the only ones paying attention. Dr. Laura Bennett and her team continued their investigation out in Jack's field, but they hadn't found anything conclusive yet. The symbols remained a mystery, and the energy readings fluctuated unpredictably. Still, the scientists kept coming back, setting up cameras and sensors in hopes of catching something, anything, that might explain the strange events. One afternoon, as Jack helped load equipment into the van, Dr. Bennett pulled him aside. "Have you noticed any changes since those two arrived?" she asked quietly, nodding toward Alex and Mia, who were standing nearby. "Changes?" Jack frowned. "Like, what?" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "People seem different, more tense, like they're waiting for something to happen." Jack thought about it. She wasn't wrong. Ever since Alex and Mia had shown up, there was an undercurrent of unease in the town. Conversations felt stilted, laughter sounded forced, and arguments broke out over the smallest things. It was almost as if the newcomer's constant observation was making everyone self-conscious. "They're not doing anything wrong," Jack said finally. "But yeah, people are acting weird around them." Dr. Bennett nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's like they're amplifying our flaws, or maybe exaggerating them somehow." Jack didn't know what to say to that. He wasn't sure he believed it, but then again he couldn't rule it out either. Meanwhile, Alex and Mia continued their silent study of humanity. At the park, they watched children chase each other across the grass, laughing and shouting. They observed couples holding hands on benches, whispering secrets to each other. They even lingered outside the church on Sunday mornings, listening to hymns drift through the open windows. To the Veil, the alien species Alex and Mia belonged to, these behaviors were baffling. Why did humans expend so much energy on activities that served no practical purpose? Singing songs, telling stories, playing games, it all seemed inefficient, even wasteful. And yet, there was something compelling about it. Something Zainara, the leader of the Veil, couldn't quite put into words. Back aboard their scout ship orbiting Earth, Zainara reviewed footage sent by Alex and Mia's drones. She watched clips of farmers working in fields, families sharing meals, friends arguing passionately about sports teams. Each scene raised more questions than answers. Why do they cling to such fragile bonds? Zainara asked aloud, addressing her second-in-command, Varek. These connections, they offer no tangible benefit, yet they persist. Varek considered the question. Perhaps it is their impermanence that gives these bonds value. Humans know they will lose loved ones, yet they continue to form attachments anyway. Zainara frowned. That defies logic. If loss is inevitable, why invest emotional energy in relationships? Perhaps that is part of what makes them unique, Varek suggested. Their capacity for resilience despite inevitable pain. Zainara stared at the screen, replaying a clip of Jack Miller talking to his wife, Rachel, as they sat together on their porch. There was warmth in his voice, a softness in her smile. Neither displayed fear or hesitation, even though both must have known their time together was finite. For the first time, Zainara felt a flicker of curiosity, not just about humans, but about herself. What would it feel like to connect with another, being so deeply, to risk vulnerability for the sake of companionship? Back on Earth, Jack found himself growing increasingly frustrated with Alex and Mia. Every time he saw them, they reminded him of the glowing object in his field and the unanswered questions swirling in his mind. Who were they really? What did they want? And why wouldn't they leave? One evening, unable to take it anymore, Jack confronted them again. This time he found them sitting on the edge of the riverbank staring at the water as it flowed past. "What are you looking for?" he demanded, his voice sharper than he intended. "You've been here for days, watching us like we're labby rats. Why?" Alex turned to face him, his expression as unreadable as ever. "We seek understanding." "Understanding of what?" Jack snapped. "Haven't you figured us out yet? We're messy, unpredictable, chaotic. That's who we are." Mia spoke up, her tone calm but firm. "Your chaos is fascinating. It drives your actions, shapes your decisions. Yet it also causes suffering. How do you endure it?" Jack blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Suffering? Sure, life isn't easy. People get hurt, lose things they care about. But we keep going because we have to, because giving up isn't an option." Mia tilted her head slightly as if processing this information. "Endurance despite suffering. Is that strength?" "It's survival," Jack corrected her. "And sometimes it's hope. You hold on to the good stuff, the love, the laughter, the moments that make life worth living. Even when things go wrong, you find a way to keep moving forward." For a brief moment, Mia's expression shifted. Her lips parted slightly and her eyes widened as if she'd glimpsed something extraordinary. Then just as quickly, her face returned to its usual blankness. "We will continue observing," Alex said, rising to his feet. "Thank you for your insight." As they walked away, Jack stood there, staring after them. He didn't know whether he'd helped them understand humanity or made them even more confused. But one thing was certain. Alex and Mia weren't done with their mission. Whatever they were searching for, they hadn't found it yet, and neither had Jack. Part 2. The next morning, Jack woke up feeling groggy and uneasy. He hadn't slept well. His dreams had been filled with swirling lights, strange symbols, and a humming noise that echoed in his ears even after he opened his eyes. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he rubbed his face with both hands, trying to shake off the lingering sense of dread. Rachel stirred beside him but didn't wake up. For once, he was glad she wasn't asking questions. He got dressed quietly and stepped outside. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the horizon in shades of orange and pink. Everything seemed normal, at first glance. But when Jack walked toward the field where he'd seen the object the night before, his stomach tightened again. The ground was still marked with those odd patterns, etched deeply into the dirt as if they'd been burned there. It wasn't his imagination. Something real had happened. Jack crouched down to examine the markings more closely. They were intricate, almost artistic, yet completely alien. None of it made any sense. As he traced one of the lines with his finger, he noticed something new. Tiny fragments of metal scattered around the edges of the design. Shiny, silvery pieces no bigger than grains of sand. He picked one up and rolled it between his fingers. It felt cold, unnaturally smooth, unlike anything he'd ever touched before. "Jack?" Rachel's voice startled him. He turned to see her standing a few feet away, arms crossed over her chest. She looked worried. "What are you doing out here so early?" "Just checking the fields," he said quickly, slipping the fragment into his pocket. He forced a smile, hoping she wouldn't notice how tense he was. "Thought I saw some weird tracks last night. Probably nothing." Rachel frowned. "Weird tracks? Like from an animal?" "No, not an animal." He hesitated, unsure how much to tell her. "More like tire marks, or maybe someone messing around out here." She studied him for a moment, then sighed. "You're hiding something, aren't you?" "No, I'm not," he lied. "Just tired, that's all." She didn't look convinced, but she let it go for now. "Breakfast will be ready soon. Don't stay out too long." After she left, Jack stood there for a while staring at the strange markings. He knew he couldn't keep this to himself forever. If whatever had landed in his field decided to stick around, other people would notice eventually. And if word got out about mysterious crop circles or glowing objects, the whole town might show up. He needed answers, and fast. Later that day, a group of scientists arrived unannounced. Jack spotted their van pulling up the dirt road leading to his house. On the side of the vehicle, bold letters read, "National Research Institute." A woman with short brown hair and glasses stepped out, followed by two men carrying equipment cases. She approached Jack with a clipboard in hand and a friendly smile. "Hi, I'm Dr. Laura Bennett," she said, extending her hand. "We detected some unusual energy readings near your property and wanted to investigate. Is it okay if we take a look around?" Jack hesitated. He wasn't sure whether letting strangers poke around his land was a good idea, especially since he didn't fully understand what was going on himself. But these were scientists. They probably knew more than he did. Maybe they could explain the glowing object and the weird symbols. "Sure," he said finally. "Go ahead, just be careful." Dr. Bennett nodded and motioned for her team to follow her. Jack trailed behind them as they made their way to the field. When they reached the spot, the scientists immediately began setting up devices, cameras, scanners, and machines that beeped softly. One of the men knelt down to inspect the markings while the other took photos. "This is fascinating," Dr. Bennett murmured, examining the patterns. These symbols matched designs found in ancient cave paintings across multiple continents. "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" Jack shook his head. "Never. I only noticed it last night." She glanced at him curiously. "Last night? You mean this appeared overnight?" "That's right." Dr. Bennett exchanged a look with one of her colleagues. "Interesting. Very interesting." While the scientists worked, Jack wandered back, toward the house. He still had chores to do, and pretending everything was normal felt easier than dealing with the growing unease in his gut. But as he passed the barn, he stopped dead in his tracks. Standing near the entrance were two figures, a man and a woman, who hadn't been there a minute ago. The man had short blonde hair and wore a plain gray shirt and jeans. The woman had dark hair tied back in a ponytail and a simple red jacket. Both looked perfectly ordinary except for one thing, their expressions. They weren't smiling, frowning, or showing any emotion at all. Their faces were blank, like masks. "Can I help you?" Jack asked cautiously, gripping the pitchfork he'd been carrying. "We are here to observe," the man said in a flat, monotone voice. His words sounded rehearsed, almost robotic. "Observe what?" Jack asked, taking a step back. "You," the woman replied. her tone identical to the man's. Your species. Your behavior. Jack's heart skipped a beat. Who are you? We are observers, the man repeated. My name is Alex Carter. This is Mia Harper. Before Jack could respond, Dr. Bennett appeared behind him holding a tablet. Everything okay here? She asked, glancing at the newcomers. These two just showed up, Jack said, pointing at Alex and Mia. They say they're here to observe. Dr. Bennett raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Well, we're conducting research out here. I'll need to ask you to leave unless you have permission from Mr. Miller. Alex tilted his head slightly, as if considering her request. Then he said, We will remain. Observation requires proximity. Mia added, We seek understanding. Their responses sent chills down Jack's spine. There was something unnatural about them. Not just their lack of emotion, but the way they spoke, as if every word had been carefully chosen. Dr. Bennett must have sensed it too, because she frowned and stepped closer to Jack. I think it's best if you leave, she told them firmly. This is private property. Instead of arguing, Alex and Mia simply turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees without another word. Jack watched them go, his mind racing. Who, or what, were they? And why did they want to observe humans? Over the next few days, Alex and Mia became a regular presence in town. They showed up at the local diner, sitting silently at a corner table without ordering food or drinks. They attended church services, standing awkwardly at the back of the room while everyone else sang hymns. They even wandered through the grocery store, picking up items but never buying anything. At first, people were curious. Who are those two? Steve Dawson, the mechanic, asked Jack one afternoon while fixing his truck. They don't talk much, do they? They're weird, Jack admitted. I don't trust them. Steve chuckled. Maybe they're undercover. Cops or something. Government types. Maybe, Jack said, though he doubted it. Something about Alex and Mia felt wrong. Not dangerous exactly, but definitely not human. Word spread quickly through the small town. Some folks thought the newcomers were harmless eccentrics. Others believed they were troublemakers. Either way, everyone had an opinion. By the end of the week, nearly everyone in town had encountered Alex and Mia at least once, and most agreed. They were unlike anyone they'd ever met. One evening, Jack decided to confront them directly. He found them sitting on a bench outside the post office, staring blankly at the sunset. Neither acknowledged him as he approached. What do you want? He demanded, crossing his arms. Why are you really here? Alex turned his head slowly, his expression unchanged. To understand. Understand what? Jack pressed. Humans? Why us? Mia answered this time, her voice as flat as Alex's. Your capacity for chaos. Her words hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. Chaos? Was that how outsiders saw humanity? As chaotic? Maybe they weren't entirely wrong. Humans fought wars, argued over politics, destroyed the environment, and yet somehow managed to create art, music, and love. It was messy, complicated, unpredictable, but it was also beautiful. Jack didn't know what to say to that. Instead, he just shook his head and walked away, leaving Alex and Mia to their silent observations. Whatever they were looking for, he hoped they wouldn't find it. Because if aliens thought humans were chaotic now, they hadn't seen anything yet. Part 6. The next morning, Jack woke up with a plan. He didn't know exactly what Alex and Mia were doing or why, but he knew one thing for sure. They weren't going to stop unless someone made them. And if no one else was willing to take the risk, then it was up to him. He started by talking to Dr. Laura Bennett. She had been studying the strange energy readings in his field since day one, and she might have noticed something that could explain Alex and Mia's behavior. When he arrived at her makeshift lab near the edge of his property, she was hunched over a laptop, typing furiously. Morning, Jack said, stepping closer. Got a minute? Laura glanced up, pushing her glasses higher on her nose. Sure. What's on your mind? I think we need to figure out what those two are really doing here, Jack said bluntly. They're causing trouble. Maybe not on purpose, but it's happening anyway. People are fighting more than ever, and I don't think it's just coincidence. Laura nodded slowly. I've been thinking the same thing. Their presence seems to amplify emotions, anger, jealousy, even sadness. But I can't prove it yet. We'd need evidence. That's why I'm here, Jack replied. If we team up, maybe we can catch them in the act, or at least find some proof that they're messing with us. Laura hesitated, weighing the risks. Finally, she sighed. Okay, but we'll have to be careful. If they realize we're on to them, who knows what they'll do. By the end of the day, Jack and Laura had recruited a small group of trusted allies. Rachel agreed to help, despite her earlier reservations, and Steve Dawson joined as well after hearing about the plan. They also brought in Linda, the diner waitress who had witnessed firsthand how Alex and Mia affected people's moods. Their first step was setting up surveillance equipment around town. Laura provided cameras and sensors from her research van, which they discreetly placed near areas where Alex and Mia frequently appeared: the park, the diner, the grocery store. The goal was simple: record everything they did, hoping to spot patterns or inconsistencies that might reveal their true intentions. While the others worked on installing the gear, Jack decided to confront Alex and Mia directly. He found them, sitting on a bench outside the post office, staring blankly at the ground. As usual, their expressions gave nothing away. "What are you trying to accomplish?" Jack asked, standing in front of them with his arms crossed. Alex tilted his head slightly. "We observe." "Observing doesn't mean manipulating," Jack shot back. "You're making people fight each other. Don't deny it. I've seen it happen." Mia's eyes flickered toward him, though her face remained impassive. Emotions drive action. Action reveals truth. "Truth?" Jack scoffed. "What truth? That humans are messy and unpredictable? We already know that. So why are you really here?" Alex hesitated before answering. "To understand chaos. To replicate it." Jack stared at him, stunned. "Replicate it? For what? Why would you want to copy our flaws?" "For survival," Mia said softly. "Your chaos gives you strength. Without it, you would collapse." It was a chilling thought. Jack opened his mouth to argue further, but before he could speak, Rachel called out from behind him. "Jack, come quick." Turning, Jack saw Rachel running toward him, holding a tablet in her hands. On the screen was footage captured by one of the hidden cameras. It showed Alex and Mia standing near a group of arguing townsfolk earlier that day. At first glance, it looked like any ordinary disagreement, until Jack noticed something strange. A faint shimmer in the air around Alex and Mia, almost like heat waves rippling off pavement. Then, moments later, the argument escalated sharply, voices rising to shouts. "They're doing something to them," Rachel said breathlessly. "Look, at this." Jack felt a surge of anger and determination. Now they had proof. Whatever Alex and Mia were doing, it wasn't natural, and it wasn't harmless. That evening, the group gathered at Jack's house to review the evidence. The shimmer in the footage was subtle but undeniable. Laura explained that it likely represented some kind of energy emission, something Alex and Mia were emitting without realizing, or perhaps deliberately. "We need to expose them," Steve suggested. "Show everyone what they're really doing." "No," Jack countered. "If we go public, they might try to cover their tracks, or worse, escalate whatever they're doing. We need to handle this carefully." "So what's the plan?" Linda asked nervously. Jack leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We trick them into showing their hand, get them to admit what they're doing, or at least give us enough proof to shut them down." Over the next few days, the group worked tirelessly to set their plan in motion. They rigged an old radio transmitter in Jack's barn, planning to broadcast recordings of Alex and Mia discussing their experiments. If the entire town heard their confession, there would be no denying the truth. Meanwhile, tensions in the town continued to rise. Arguments broke out daily, friendships fractured, and even families struggled to stay united. Despite the chaos, Jack reminded everyone of their shared values: loyalty, kindness, perseverance. Slowly, the community began to unite, Not against each other, but against the growing discord sown by Alex and Mia. Finally, the night of the broadcast arrived. Jack and his team gathered in the barn, listening intently as the recording played over the transmitter. It was grainy, distorted, but clear enough to make out Alex and Mia's voices. Humans display contradictions. Chaos drives growth. Their resilience is admirable, yet fragile. To replicate chaos. For survival. For several minutes, static crackled through the air, then silence. At first, nothing happened. The streets remained quiet, the houses dark. But soon lights flickered on across the town as people stepped outside, murmuring in confusion. Someone had heard the transmission, and word spread quickly. By dawn, the whole town knew the truth. Alex and Mia weren't human. They weren't tourists or researchers. They were observers, alien observers, experimenting on humanity for reasons no one fully understood. As the sun rose, Jack stood on his porch, watching as neighbors gathered in groups talking animatedly. Some looked angry, others scared, but none seemed defeated. In fact, many appeared determined to stand together, united against whatever threat loomed over them. When Alex and Mia finally appeared, walking calmly down the dirt road toward Jack's house, they were met with dozens of faces staring back at them. No one spoke, no one moved. The air was thick with tension, but also resolve. Jack stepped forward, facing them squarely. "You wanted to understand us," he said, his voice steady. "Well, here we are. Messy, chaotic, unpredictable, but strong. Stronger than you thought." For the first time, Alex and Mia looked uncertain. Their blank expressions faltered, replaced by something resembling doubt, or perhaps fear. And for the first time, Jack felt truly hopeful. Whatever came next, humanity wasn't backing down. Part 7. The standoff lasted for what felt like hours, though in reality it was only a few tense minutes. Alex and Mia stood at the edge of the crowd, their usual calm demeanor shaken for the first time since they'd arrived. The townsfolk formed a loose semicircle around them, some holding tools, pitchforks, hammers, even baseball bats, while others simply crossed their arms, glaring silently. No one spoke. The weight of collective anger and suspicion hung heavy in the air. Jack stepped forward again, his voice firm but controlled. "You've been watching us, testing us, messing with our lives. Now it's your turn to answer some questions." Alex tilted his head slightly as if processing the demand. "We sought understanding," he said finally, his monotone voice carrying an edge of defensiveness. "Nothing more." "Understanding?" Steve Dawson shouted from the back of the crowd. "Is that what you call tearing people apart? Making neighbors hate each other?" Mia glanced toward him, her expression unreadable. Emotions drive action. Action reveals truth. Rachel stepped beside Jack, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "And what truth did you find? That we're weak because we feel too much, is that it?" "No," Mia replied after a pause. Her tone softened, almost imperceptibly. "Your chaos gives you strength." The crowd murmured among themselves, unsure how to respond. Strength wasn't something they associated with the turmoil Alex and Mia had caused. To most, it just felt like pain and division. But there was something in Mia's words, a flicker of respect, that gave Jack pause. "You keep saying chaos," Laura interjected, stepping forward with her tablet in hand. She held up the screen showing the shimmering energy waves captured on camera. "But this isn't observation. This is manipulation. You're using technology, or whatever that is, to push people into extremes. Why?" Alex hesitated before answering. For the first time, his perfect composure cracked slightly. "To replicate emotions, to save our kind." "Save your kind?" Jack repeated, frowning. "What does that mean?" Mia spoke next, her voice quieter than before. "Our species follows logic, pure logic. It has brought order but also stagnation. Without chaos, without connection, We falter. We die. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. This revelation caught everyone off guard. These strangers weren't here to conquer or destroy. They were desperate, searching for a way to survive. But that didn't excuse what they'd done. So you came here to steal from us? Rachel asked sharply. To take pieces of who we are and leave us broken in return? No, Alex said quickly. Not to steal, to learn. Well, you picked the wrong way to do it, Linda snapped, stepping forward. Her hands trembled as she pointed at them. You don't get to mess with people's lives just because you're curious. The tension in the air grew thicker. Some in the crowd began to shout insults while others tightened their grip on makeshift weapons. Jack raised his hands, trying to calm everyone down. Wait, he called out. Let's hear them out before we do anything rash. Reluctantly, the crowd quieted again. Jack turned back to Alex and Mia, his jaw clenched. If you wanted to understand us, why didn't you just ask? Why all the sneaking around, the experiments, the lies? We feared rejection, Mia admitted softly. Humans resist outsiders. We thought observation would be safer. Safer for you, maybe, Steve muttered under his breath. Jack ignored him and pressed on. Even if that's true, you went too far. You hurt people. You made friends turn against each other, families fight. Do you have any idea how much damage you've done? Alex looked down at the ground, his blank expression wavering. We did not intend harm. Intentions don't matter when people get hurt, Rachel said firmly. What matters is fixing it. Are you willing to make things right? Mia hesitated, glancing at Alex. After a long moment, she nodded. Yes, if we can. The crowd erupted into murmurs again. Some people seemed skeptical, others hopeful. Jack exchanged a glance with Rachel, then turned back to face Alex and Mia. Here's the deal, he said, his voice rising so everyone could hear. You stop whatever you're doing right now. No more experiments, no more interference. And you help us fix the damage you caused. If you agree, we'll let you stay until you figure out whatever it is you need to figure out. But if you refuse, he paused, letting the threat hang in the air. Alex and Mia exchanged another glance, their alien communication silent but clear. Finally, Alex spoke. We will comply. A ripple of surprise spread through the crowd. No one had expected such a straightforward agreement. Still, trust was hard to come by after everything that had happened. Good, Jack said, nodding. But remember this. If you break your promise, we won't hesitate to act. Got it? Both Alex and Mia nodded solemnly. With that, the crowd began to disperse, muttering amongst themselves about what had just transpired. Jack stayed behind, watching as Alex and Mia walked slowly toward the edge of town, their movements unusually hesitant. Later that night, Jack sat on his porch with Rachel, staring out at the dark fields. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of wood settling in the cool night air. You think they'll keep their word? Rachel asked after a while. I don't know, Jack admitted. But I think they're scared. Scared enough to try. Rachel sighed, leaning her head against his shoulder. Do you think they really learned anything from all this? Jack thought about it for a moment. Maybe. They saw how strong we are when we stick together, how resilient we can be even when things fall apart. If nothing else, I hope that sticks with them. Rachel smiled faintly. That's something, at least. Across town, Alex and Mia stood near the riverbank, gazing silently at the water. Their forms shimmered faintly, hinting at the advanced technology hidden beneath their human disguises. For the first time since arriving on Earth, they allowed themselves to reflect, not just on humanity, but on their own flaws and fears. They are stronger than we anticipated, Mia said softly, breaking the silence. Yes, Alex agreed. Their chaos, it is not weakness. It is adaptation. Survival. Mia nodded slowly. Perhaps there is value in imperfection. Back aboard their scout ship orbiting Earth, Zainara reviewed footage of the confrontation, clips of angry townsfolk, defiant speeches, and moments of unity played across the screen. For once, she didn't focus on the chaos. It was the connections that caught her attention. The way humans forgave each other, worked together, fought for something greater than themselves. Varric approached her cautiously. "What will you do now?" Zainara hesitated before answering. "We will observe further, but perhaps with less interference. Humanity has taught us much already." As the ship drifted silently above the planet, Zainara couldn't shake the image of Jack Miller standing tall against Alex and Mia, defending his people despite fear and uncertainty. There was power in that. Power born not from logic or efficiency, but from emotion, resilience, and hope. For the first time in centuries, Zainara wondered if the Veil had been wrong to reject chaos entirely. Perhaps in their pursuit of pure logic they had lost something vital, something essential. And perhaps, just perhaps, humanity could show them the way back. Part 8. The days that followed were tense but quieter. Alex and Mia kept their promise, stepping back from their experiments and avoiding the townsfolk as much as possible. They still lingered on the edges of daily life, watching, listening, but their presence no longer carried the same weight of unease. The shimmering energy waves had vanished, and with them, the heightened emotions that had plagued the town began to fade. People started repairing what had been broken. Neighbors apologized for harsh words exchanged during arguments they barely remembered starting. Families reunited over shared meals, laughing about how ridiculous everything had seemed just weeks before. Even Mrs. Henderson and Linda patched things up after a heartfelt conversation at the diner. Life wasn't perfect, it never was, but it felt like normalcy was slowly returning. Jack noticed the change most when he walked through town. Where once there had been tension and suspicion, now there were smiles and nods. People greeted each other warmly, holding doors open or offering small kindnesses without expecting anything in return. It was as if the chaos Alex and Mia had stirred up had forced everyone to confront their flaws, and in doing so, reminded them of what truly mattered: connection. One evening, Jack found himself sitting on the porch with Rachel, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of freshly turned earth from his fields. For the first time in weeks, he felt at peace. "You think they'll leave soon?" Rachel asked, breaking the silence. "I don't know," Jack admitted. "Maybe, or maybe they'll stick around a little longer. Either way, I think we've shown them enough." Rachel smiled faintly. "You did good, Jack. You stood up for everyone when no one else would." Jack shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just did what needed to be done. We all did." Across town, Alex and Mia stood near the edge of the riverbank, staring silently at the water as it flowed past. Their forms shimmered faintly under the moonlight, a reminder of their true nature hidden beneath human disguises. For the first time since arriving on Earth, they allowed themselves to reflect, not just on humanity, but on their own species' struggles. Mia broke the silence first. They endure despite pain, despite loss. How do they find strength in such imperfection? Alex tilted his head slightly, considering her question. Perhaps it is not perfection they seek. Perhaps it is meaning. Meaning, Mia repeated softly, as if tasting the word. Is that why they form connections? To create meaning? It seems so, Alex replied. Even when those connections falter, they rebuild. They adapt. Mia nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. We have much to learn from them. Back aboard their scout ship orbiting Earth, Zainara reviewed the final recording sent by Alex and Mia's drones. Clips of families laughing together, friends forgiving each other, communities coming together after conflict played across the screen. Each moment revealed something new about humanity. Resilience born from vulnerability, strength forged through chaos, beauty hidden within imperfection. Varric approached her cautiously. What will you do now? Zainara hesitated before answering. We will withdraw. Our interference has caused harm, and further observation would risk more damage. Varric frowned. But what of our mission? Have we learned enough? Zainara, gazed at the images of Earth below, her thoughts swirling like storm clouds. Perhaps the lesson is not one of replication, but of acceptance. Humanity thrives because of its chaos, not in spite of it. If we wish to survive, we must embrace our own imperfections, as they have embraced theirs. Varric considered this, then nodded slowly. It will not be easy. Our people have long rejected emotion in favor of logic. No, Zinara agreed. It will not be easy, but perhaps it is necessary. The next morning, the townsfolk woke to find Alex and Mia gone. There was no note, no explanation, just an empty bench where they had often sat, and a faint impression in the dirt near the riverbank, as if their ship had landed briefly before departing. At first some worried they might return, but as the days passed without incident, the fear faded. Jack visited the field where the glowing object had first appeared, half expecting to find traces of its presence. But the ground was smooth, untouched, as if nothing had ever happened. He crouched down, running his fingers over the soil, and smiled faintly. "They're gone," Rachel said, joining him. "Do you think they learned what they came for?" Jack stood up, brushing dirt off his hands. "I think so. Maybe not everything, but enough to make them rethink things. That's all we can ask for." Rachel nodded, slipping her hand into his. "And what about us? What did we learn?" Jack thought about it for a moment. "That we're stronger than we think, stronger together. Even when things get messy, even when it feels like everything's falling apart, we find a way to keep going." Rachel squeezed his hand. "Sounds like hope to me." Far above the Earth, the Vale scout ship drifted silently through space. Zinara watched the blue-green planet grow smaller and smaller on the view screen, her mind heavy with thoughts of what lay ahead. Her people faced challenges unlike any they had encountered before, not external threats but internal ones. The rigid adherence to logic that had once guided them now felt like chains binding them to stagnation. As the ship prepared to enter hyperspace, Zinara glanced at Varric. "Tell me again, Varric. Why do humans cling to chaos?" Varric hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Because chaos gives them freedom, freedom to grow, to adapt, to connect. Without it, they would lose themselves." Zinara nodded slowly, her expression softening. "Freedom? Yes. Perhaps that is what we must seek." With that, she turned away from the view screen, leaving Earth behind, but carrying its lessons with her. For the first time in centuries, the Vale began to question their ways, inspired by the chaotic beauty of human existence. And somewhere on a quiet farm in Kansas, Jack Miller looked up at the stars, wondering if the universe had shifted, slightly back into place. Part 5. As the days turned into weeks, Alex and Mia's presence in the town became less of a mystery and more of a routine. People stopped staring at them every time they walked by, and some even began to treat them like odd but harmless neighbors. But beneath this growing acceptance, something darker was brewing, something no one could quite put their finger on. Jack noticed it first. At the diner, conversations seemed sharper, angrier. Neighbors who had been friends for years suddenly bickered over small things, whose dog barked too loudly, whose car blocked the driveway, whose kids played too rough in the streets. Even Steve Dawson, usually the calmest guy in town, snapped at customers for minor complaints about his work. It wasn't just frustration, it felt personal, raw, exaggerated. One afternoon, Jack found himself caught in the middle of an argument between two farmers at the local feed store. Both men were shouting about whose tractor had scratched the other's truck bumper, a scratch so faint that Jack could barely see it. The fight escalated quickly, with harsh words flying back and forth until one of them stormed out, slamming the door behind him. "What's wrong with everyone?" Jack muttered under his breath as he paid for his supplies. He glanced toward Alex and Mia, who stood quietly near the window, watching the scene unfold. Their faces were blank, unreadable, but there was something unsettling about the way they observed everything without reacting. When Jack got home, Rachel was waiting for him, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Did you hear what happened at the grocery store today?" she asked before he could even step inside. "No, what?" Mrs. Henderson yelled at Linda for bagging her groceries too slowly. Can you believe that? She's always been such a sweet old lady. Jack sighed and set his bag down on the counter. It's not just her, everyone's acting weird lately, like they're wound up tighter than usual. Rachel frowned. Do you think those two have anything to do with it? Jack hesitated. I don't know, maybe. They've been poking around long enough to stir things up. Dr. Laura Bennett shared their concerns. Her team had noticed similar patterns during their observations: heightened emotions, increased conflict, irrational behavior. At first, they dismissed it as coincidence or stress from the strange events surrounding Alex and Mia's arrival. But as the data piled up, it became harder to ignore. They're influencing us, Laura said one evening as she reviewed footage with Jack. Not directly, not physically, but somehow, they're amplifying our flaws, pushing people to act out extreme versions of anger, greed, jealousy. How? Jack asked, leaning forward. They haven't done anything except watch. Laura shook her head. That's the thing. They are doing something. We just can't see it. Maybe it's psychological, maybe it's technological. Whatever it is, it's subtle enough to slip under our radar. Jack rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. So what do we do? Tell everyone to stop fighting? It's not that simple, Laura admitted. If we confront them directly, they might deny it, or worse, escalate whatever they're doing. We need proof. Proof. That word echoed in Jack's mind as he drove home later that night. Proof of what? That Alex and Mia weren't human? That they were manipulating the town? How could anyone prove something so bizarre? Unbeknownst to Jack, Alex and Mia were indeed experimenting, but not in the way most people assumed. Back aboard their scout ship, Zainara monitored the results of their latest tests. Using advanced technology hidden within their humanoid forms, Alex and Mia subtly influenced the emotional states of the townspeople. They nudged arguments to flare hotter, encouraged selfish impulses, and heightened feelings of mistrust. All of it was carefully calibrated to push humans to their limits. The goal was simple: to extract pure emotional data. The Veil believed that humanity's greatest strength and its greatest weakness lay in its capacity for chaos. By isolating and analyzing specific emotions, they hoped to replicate them artificially and bring balance to their own crumbling society. Zainara watched the recordings closely, fascinated by the results. In one clip, a man screamed at his neighbor over a misplaced fence post. In another, a woman cried alone in her kitchen after a bitter argument with her husband. Each moment revealed a different facet of human emotion: rage, despair, envy, guilt. They are resilient, Varric noted, standing beside her. Even when pushed to extremes, they endure. Yes, Zainara agreed. But at what cost? Their chaos tears them apart as much as it binds them together. Varric hesitated. Do you think we are causing harm? Zainara didn't answer immediately. She replayed a clip of Jack Miller comforting Rachel after a heated disagreement. Despite their anger, they forgave each other, holding hands as they sat quietly on the porch. There was pain in their expressions, yes, but also love, connection, hope. We must proceed cautiously, Zainara said finally. Their resilience may be stronger than we anticipated. Back on Earth, tensions reached a breaking point. One evening, a group of townsfolk gathered outside the diner, shouting accusations at Alex and Mia. Someone claimed they'd seen the pair tampering with equipment at the farm. Another accused them of stealing supplies from the hardware store. The crowd grew louder, angrier, until Jack stepped forward to intervene. Stop, he shouted, raising his hands. You're letting your anger get the better of you. Do you really think yelling at them will solve anything? For a moment, the crowd quieted, unsure how to respond. Then Steve Dawson spoke up. Then what do you suggest, Jack? Just let them keep messing with us? I don't know what they're doing, Jack admitted. But if we turn on each other, we're playing right into their hands. Alex and Mia stood silently through the entire exchange, their expressions unchanged. Finally, Mia spoke. Your emotions drive your actions. Without them, you would not survive. Someone in the crowd snorted. Yeah, well, our emotions are tearing us apart right now. Mia tilted her head slightly. Perhaps. But they also unite you. Without connection, chaos becomes destruction. Her words hung heavy in the air, leaving everyone uneasy. Slowly, the crowd dispersed, muttering under their breaths. Jack watched Alex and Mia walk away, his mind racing. What were they trying to accomplish? And why did their cryptic answers only raise more questions? Later that night, Jack sat on the porch, with Rachel staring out at the dark fields. I don't trust them, he said finally. But I don't think they're here to hurt us either. Not directly, anyway. Rachel sighed. So what do we do? Wait for them to leave? No, Jack replied firmly. We find out what they're really after, and make sure they don't take it too far. Little did Jack know, Alex and Mia's experiments were far from over, and the next phase would test the limits of humanity's resilience in ways no one could predict.